Welcome to episode number 13 of Notes from School, the podcast. Lucky number 13. Welcome in to the Assembly Hall. It's the Easter holidays. I am currently in the States on Easter holidays, physically in person, but as I'm recording this, I am doing a pre-record. As if you are watching this on YouTube, you will see I'm still in the same room that I normally record in, with the William Morris curtains up behind me with the Strawberry Thief. So welcome to episode number 13. It is an interview episode today. We're inviting another guest into the Assembly Hall of the Notes from School podcast. And this guest is doing something that is very much a path that I believe in wholeheartedly. His name is James as well, James Sills. And he is a massive advocate for singing, communal music making, and getting involved in choirs, and he has been part of choirs and part of singing for a very long time, and he's currently been working on a BBC radio series called Bantam of the Opera, which we're going to get into in a bit. So I can't wait to chat to James all about his experiences, his love of singing, and why it's so important to all sing together. So there's not going to be a huge amount of a catch-up this week because it is a pre-recorded episode. But all I've got to say is I'm probably, at the time of this recording, in the scorching Arizona sun, which is probably too hot, and I've probably forgotten to wear sun cream, and hopefully I'm chilling out a bit. But I love how this is like a message to my future self, as it's a pre-recorded episode. But whatever you are doing, I hope you have an amazing Easter holidays. Next week's episode, by the way, is one you cannot miss. It's a St. George's Day special with Tom Carradine. I bigged it up in the last episode. By the way, I hope you enjoyed the last episode. The Easter special, the Easter song special. We're still not at Easter weekend, but I hope you enjoyed the Easter songs. The Easter hymns, you may have disagreed with my top 10, but I love all those tunes. I did have a request, which I didn't do in the last episode, for a forgotten school assembly song, because I've been putting out a few videos online of my slightly more forgotten or niche assembly songs that we sang. This one actually comes from the Alleluia Songbook, one of my favourite songbooks, and it's called I Watch the Sunrise. So this is going to be the sing-along part of the assembly today. We're going to sing at the beginning of the assembly rather than the end, because we're going to have a great chat with James Sills all about singing. But before we do, we're going to go to number 15 in the Alleluia Songbook. Okay, and this song is called I Watch the Sunrise. Okay, it goes like this. I watch the sunrise, lighting the sky, casting the shadows near. And on this morning, bright though it be, I feel those shadows near me. Here's the chorus. But you are always close to me, following all my ways. May I be always close to you, following all your ways, Lord. Okay, let's do one more verse. I watch the moonlight, guarding the night, waiting till morning comes. The air is silent, earth is at rest, only your peace is near me. Here's a chorus. But you are always close to me, following all my ways. May I be always close to you, following all your ways, Lord. Oh, what a beautiful song. If you remember that one from school, hopefully it's brought back some good memories, and hopefully it's not too sad and emotional. I watch the sunrise. What a beautiful tune. The second verse was, I watch the sunlight shine through the clouds, warming the earth below. And the third verse was, I watch the sunset fading away, lighting the clouds with sleep. But that's got also another great illustration in this book. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that, which is by David McGee, I believe, who did the illustrations for Mr. Ben. Okay, so that was my forgotten school assembly song, which is the sing-along for episode 13 of the Notes from School podcast. It's time to welcome our guest into the assembly hall today. I hope you enjoyed this chat. His name is James as well. James Sills. James versus James, talking about how much we love singing. I hope you enjoy the interview and see you next week for an amazing episode with Tom Carradine. Okay, so welcome into the assembly hall, James Sills. Welcome to the Notes from School podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on.
It's lovely to see you, James. And in this assembly hall, I'll probably be right at the front, hands on knees, eyes ready to sing.
Oh yeah, were you one of the keen ones at school?
Oh yeah, I was. When it came to singing, I certainly was. Yeah.
Did you have? So first of all, where did you grow up? Was it North Wales?
No. So I live in North Wales now, but I grew up in West Yorkshire,
Right.
in a little village, about eight miles from Bradford. Yeah. So yeah, little village school right next to the church where I went every Sunday morning. And I think, especially listening to your podcast, I think I now realize that was such a golden age of singing in schools, and I didn't realize it at the time. But yeah, we had two teachers at the school who played piano and would wheel the piano in and would sing every day, and it was just part and parcel of school life. Loved it.
And we'll talk about Bradford later on, I think.
Yes, there's been a return.
Yeah, very important as to what you're doing now. So you had lots of singing in school. Did you have an overhead projector in your assembly hall?
Did we? I think we had books, actually. I think the overhead projector came in middle school. I think looking back, there were so many things that were just kind of wheeled in. The piano was wheeled in, the overhead projector was wheeled in.
Yeah.
The video was wheeled in.
Exactly. For some of those lessons, they'll wheel in one of those really old televisions with the stack of video tapes.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Yeah. Love the nostalgia. I think we had two different books, and I think we had Common Praise. I think might have been one of them, and I can't remember the other one. But to be honest, like the songs just becoming great. I've got three young kids myself. My eldest is 7, and just the way that they can remember song lyrics is unbelievable. Like literally sing it a couple of times and listen to it a few times, and it's absolutely in. So I think maybe there were lyric sheets, but I think we just ended up remembering them because we'd sing the same songs over and over.
I think thinking back on it, I always thought that we had books as well, but I don't think we did. I think we did it from an overhead projector or from memory, because we sang the same kind of 30 songs. From the songbooks.
And was there like an overhead projector monitor? Like were you picked to,
No, I never was. I never, we did have an overhead projector monitor, but I never was picked for it, which I think means that that's why I'm doing my show now. I'm basically working through my childhood.
Do you have an overhead projector for your shows?
Well, no, that's a very good question. I actually don't. I did buy one actually, but I got it off eBay, and then for the Christmas tour. And then it got to a couple of days before the tour and it still hadn't arrived. And they said, oh, there was a flood in the warehouse, so we can't send it to you. Here's a refund. I thought, oh, that's a shame. But actually, it was fine in the end because my car was so full of other stuff that I actually couldn't fit it in the back of the car. But I do say at the beginning of the show, right? And someone wheels out the overhead projector, and then nobody comes out there. All right, we don't have an overhead projector today, but we're going to go 21st century with QR codes that you can scan, and you can get lyrics on your phone and all that kind of stuff. So you can be your own overhead projector monitor for the show.
Yeah, and I guess it's a lot more manageable with a one-man show as well.
Yeah, I would need a monitor to come up and change all the slides. Sometimes I've done it with a newer projector with the lyrics up on the screen for some of the bigger shows. So I'm not actually sure what I'm going to do for my Christmas tour this year because some of the venues are quite big. So it's going to be tricky having lots and lots and lots of people all scanning QR codes. But I don't know. I'll play it by ear. I mean, I think I'm going to do a big projector for that. Which will be quite fun. The only thing I don't really want to do is to turn it into like a karaoke type thing. We've got like a bouncing ball type thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So much fun.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll talk a lot more about your experience well, the kind of the preamble about Bradford is that you're currently working on a BBC project, which is very important around Bradford, right?
Oh yeah, it really is. Yeah, it's terrifically important. I mean, so 2025, Bradford is the UK City of Culture, and I was absolutely thrilled when that was announced. Oh, well, it was, I think it was about 6 months ago. I haven't lived in Bradford, since I left for university, but my family are back there, and I go back there a lot. But yeah, I live in the hills of North Wales. So that was announced, and then just before the end of last year, I had a call from a production team at the BBC saying, "Look, we've got this idea. It's called Bantam of the Opera." And I knew straight away what they were shooting at here because the Bantams are the football team. I used to go and watch them as a kid. I'm a big football fan. And so their idea was to take 50 football fans and turn them into a kind of a choir with an operatic focus for the Bradford City of Culture. And then they said, well, we've got a few big names on board who are going to champion it and kind of collaborate. People like Andrew Lloyd Webber. I'm like, excuse me, Lesley, Garett, Chris Kamara. They were like, we just need a choir leader now. Do you think this is your kind of thing? I was like, this sounds right up my street. Like, I don't know a huge amount about opera, but I do know a lot about Bradford, about how important football and singing and how they go together and how they're great at community building. And they said it's got a big mental health focus. We're going to be really following the stories of people's lives and how the choir is going to impact them over the year. And so I just thought, this is just brilliant. This could have been written for me. And thankfully, they came back to me a few meetings later and said, yeah, you're the person we'd like you to take this forward. Yeah. So we're now 6 weeks in, and
That's
there's still,
fantastic.
yeah.
It does sound like it's a project made for you, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, really? Because I don't know about yourself, James, but I spent such a long time trying to figure out like exactly what my kind of thing was, because all the way through kind of through my teenage years and through university, I was like playing trombone in big bands and orchestras, and I was writing songs on the guitar and fronting bands and doing all kinds of stuff, but I didn't really have kind of like what felt like a musical home, I suppose, other than I just like making music with other people and then it felt good. And I love that feeling of performing with other people and stuff. And, it's been quite a gradual journey to get to the point now where, singing is my kind of big thing and communal singing and bringing people into that world. Yeah, and so when a project kind of comes to you like this, you kind of think, oh, okay, well, so all these different steps of the journey that I've been on, and all these different parts of me, both of us as a musician, but also just like, the fact I'm a football fan, and that I'm a proud Yorkshireman, and all this stuff is kind of rolled together in one. So it's kind of like, okay, sometimes it's good just to kind of wait it out and kind of trust that the universe will kind of deliver.
It's so funny, isn't it? A friend of mine came to a show I did last year, and I've known her for a long time. And we've kind of grown up together, going to university together, and doing all sorts of kind of choral projects and all sorts of things. And she said, and she's known all the various things I've done, like doing singer-songwriter gigs and writing my own stuff and etc. And she said, it's so funny that of all the things that you've done, the thing that has really picked up and connected with so many people is your show about school assembly songs.
Yeah.
And it is. You never know what's going to connect with people and what's going to, become successful, I suppose.
Exactly, yeah. You never know what's gonna kind of land. You almost kind of couldn't write it, It's and I suppose maybe in a way it's kind of it's like, well, what's the need there for? Like, what are people crying out for? And it's yeah. Sometimes it takes a while to kind of work that out, I suppose.
And you've kind of going back a little bit, you've been working with choirs in various forms for quite a long time and set up multiple of your own choirs, and you've even written a book about the importance of singing. We'll get into that in a bit, but what was the first choir that you kind of worked with, not just as a singer?
Yeah, I think it was when I just graduated. So I did my music degree in Liverpool, and for the last year of that, I started working at a school in North Liverpool, like quite a deprived area, just an amazing just an amazing kind of community and just an amazing set of schools. And again, it was back in the day where there was a huge amount of money investment in music education. So it was a performing arts status school. And they basically created a job for me, working 20 hours a week within the college, but going out into the primary schools, going out to feeder primary schools and delivering music workshops for them. And like I was totally not qualified for this in that I hadn't done any teacher training. But I was enthusiastic, and I'd kind of done some teaching and stuff. And anyway, one of the first projects I did was a school, St John's School in Everton, and it was an after-school choir because they didn't have a kind of a singing provision. And basically, about 95% of this choir were these kind of young lads who were opting to come and sing rather than play football.
Interesting, especially
And
being in
yeah,
that area.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I was a little bit, I didn't know how I felt about that because I was also a massive football fan. But it was just really super joyful, and we sung really uplifting songs. And we made little recordings and did performances, and I was just like making it up as I went along. But they were just great. They gave me so much. They gave so much energy. It was so joyful, and it was kind of just quite unexpected, really. And I know that, gosh, that was like 20 years ago. And I know that some of those lads have now gone and had, careers in music, or they're still playing music and whatever. Yeah, and somewhere in my loft, I need to find it. We've got a CD that we made because I stayed in that role for 2 years, and then I went on kind of did some musical travels and a few other things. But yeah, so anyway, that was where it began. Just kind of making it up as I went along, but it was great. It was great fun.
I suppose you
Happy
never
times.
know the impact of a singing session and what it can mean to people. At the end of that session, you might have people walking out that it opens up their eyes, and especially for young boys. What kind of age were they that you were teaching?
So it was primary school, yeah. So I say they were mainly kind of like 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
And then actually what I started to notice that each week, like I'd come to a choir rehearsal, one of them would have a guitar on their lap, or one would have like an old clarinet from the music cupboard or something, or so it then sparked an interest in music. And I don't think, for any of the groups that are in, like the necessary next step doesn't have to be, I want to do more music or more singing, but it just could be like, oh, I now know what it feels like to be part of something, or I now know what it feels like to have a bit more confidence, or to have overcome, like a hurdle in my own life, or just simply, oh, I've done something joyful that's kind of like, lit me up a little bit. And um, I think you can never measure those things. You never know what the ripple effect is going to be, and that's kind of amazing, really. I mean, I was thinking about this yesterday because we're talking about, yeah, about the Bantam of the Opera, and there's one of the guys in the choir who, at the beginning he was like, I would never have thought I'd be doing this. I can't believe I'm doing this. And we've been learning Habanera from Carmen, but we did it at a flash mob last week for our first public performance. And he's been singing it at home and on his way to work. And then he posted a video of his daughter singing it, who's like 8, singing Habanera from
Yeah.
Carmen. So, I'd passed the song. He'd learnt the song from me. He'd then been singing it at home, and he taught it to her. And there's that ripple effect just straight away. And that's just after kind of a month of rehearsals. And, I just think that's really amazing. And, anyone who's involved in leading choirs, particularly with a kind of a community, kind of well-being, kind of human focus, the ripples do go far and wide, and I think that's just such an amazing thing.
And the thing is, you might get some children that just want to do an after school choir or something, or they want to do a choir at lunchtime to get out of having to do sports or to get out of having to do homework, and think, oh, do you know what? It'll just be a bit of a laugh. And yeah, it might be a bit of a laugh, but also all the other incredible things that you'll get from it that they wouldn't necessarily have realized before they go into the choir at school. And I think it's especially interesting, probably in an area that is so. I feel like, obviously Liverpool and Everton are just so iconic with sports, but actually that area is also very iconic with music as well. So I feel like the two are quite hand in hand, especially around that sort of area. And there has been an interesting link between sports and singing in lots of ways, especially with, well, I mean, if we're talking about opera, go back to the 90s and you've got the three tenors that are soundtracking the World Cup, and everybody around the world knew them, right? It meant that you had to have three operatic tenors who may have been famous a little bit, but not necessarily household names around the world, then suddenly becoming so synonymous with football. It's quite interesting, actually, and also every team has a song, right? And everyone that goes to see a football match will sing along. The words aren't necessarily what you might sing in school all the time, but there is a lot more. It's a really fascinating link between sports and singing, especially football and rugby.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, for me, like it's always gone hand in hand, and actually, the first formative singing experience I had as a singer, where I was aware of this amazing phenomenon of being part of a bigger group. Was on the football terraces. I went to my first game with my dad when I was 5, and I just remember that moment of singing, of feeling connected to my dad, of feeling connected to my team, of feeling connected to the people around me. And in a way, I think all the work that I've been doing, over the last 20 years as a sing leader has been to try and recreate that feeling, but for other people. And
Yeah.
I think, so often singing is over complicated, or we put layers and baggage around it that just doesn't need to be there. Like you're at a football or a rugby game, it's just a really fundamental expression of kind of the joy and the camaraderie and whatever, and you don't think about it. Um,
You're not being
and now,
judged.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And I think there's something really important about that, actually, about the fact that when you're singing on the football terrace, you're singing for a higher reason, which is to get behind your team. If you're singing in church, you're singing for a higher reason, which is to sing the gospel, or whatever. If you're singing a lullaby to your child, you've got a higher reason to sing, which is to, form that relationship with your child and maybe send them to sleep or whatever. And so I think when you kind of take away the judgment aspect or the kind of performative aspect, I think that's really, really liberating. Um, and I think in a way that's kind of what you're doing with your show, because you're not kind of presenting it as, okay, we're going to come along, we're going to form a choir and we're going to whatever. It's just kind of like, just kind of join in, let's be nostalgic, let's just
Yeah.
do this. And I think that's really important, because if we're looking at ways we can bring more people into the singing world and get more people feeling less inhibited about singing, I think we maybe need, we do need to kind of strip away that kind of fear of judgment and the performative element and just let people have fun with it.
I do really love that about the show that I've done in that. I'm not. I said at the beginning, I'm not judging you if you want to add any harmonies. If you feel like you want to even do some misremembered words from school, it's a safe space. Okay, I'm not going to judge you. I might put up a video on TikTok, but I can't promise anything. And I think people really love that. And we were kind of just mentioning earlier about having lyrics on phones or on the screen or something. And actually, part of my reasoning behind having the lyrics on people's phones is that they kind of use it as a bit of a comfort blanket in a way, because you just got the lyrics in front of you, and if you want to sing along you can. Some people belt it out and some people just sing very quietly, and that's totally fine. However you want to sing, I think is great. And a few people have asked me, oh, why do you think people enjoy coming to the show and singing along? And I kind of say that unless you sing in a choir actively, or unless you go to a sports match and you sing along, a lot of adults don't really sing very much or haven't sung since school. And I think that a lot of people may have had negative experiences with singing, or music teachers, or not necessarily even teachers, someone in their life that says, oh, be quiet, you can't sing, or you can't hold a tune or whatever. And that sticks with people. Just one sentence can stick with someone from the age of 8 to the age of 80. And they'll get through their life thinking, oh, I can't sing. But, I mean, even if you think you can't, if you can get in a room with lots of other people and they're all belting it out and you just join in, you don't have to sing particularly loudly. But I think so many people can sing, or pretty much everyone can sing, to some extent. And it has been really great to see people come out of their shell a little bit at these shows, and I'm sure you see it all the time in the choirs that you run.
Yeah, I mean, I just start from the assumption that everyone can sing, and it's kind of my job just to get them to that place. And and so I really think about the process, like how do I get, how do you get the horse to drink water or whatever? How do I
Yeah.
get people to that place? And it will vary from context to context. And so I've now been running a long-standing community choir for the last, I don't know, 12 years. People decide that they want to come and sing, they pay their subs, and it's great. Obviously you still work on the relationship and whatever, but people are already in the room. Literally, they're paying to be in the room to sing. It's very different when, I do work with kind of corporates and organizations where I might turn up at a conference unannounced, and they have like a 30-minute team building activity through singing. Those people are not expecting it, and a lot of the time they are not up for it.
Tell me a little
So,
bit more about that if you can. How does that work, and what kind of companies have you done that for?
so I've done it for, I mean, I've done it for some big companies. I mean, so I've done it for leadership teams from companies like Coca-Cola, Expedia, Olympus, a lot of these big companies, because they have these kind of conferences, maybe 2 or 3 day conferences where often it can be very kind of dry. and I'm just relaying here what one of the event organizers said to me. So
Yeah.
this was about a year ago, and I'd been at a previous conference at her company, and she said, James, we've got this conference coming up. It's gonna be very boring.
Okay.
She said, we're just gonna be talking for 3 days. It's all presentations and strategy, and everyone's sitting down. So we need you there to energize us, to bring us together, and to bring us a bit of joy. And I'm like, great, because I know how to do that. I know how to, use singing to do that. And so I think, there's a really kind of important role that singing can play in that arena. But obviously people are not expecting it. um, you know, People are apprehensive, all these things. But actually, at a 2 or 3 day conference, I just kind of build up people's trust. So I do these like little 15-minute energizers. The first 10-minute energizer might be just a bit of stretching, standing up, maybe just like some kind of body percussion or whatever. And then just gradually building up people's kind of confidence and their trust in me. And usually, what then happens is that the very last thing of the whole conference is then, 200 or 300 people singing, letting their hair down. Sometimes we do it at the evening party when they've had a drink, but it's always great taking people on that journey. It's just that in that context, the journey can be a little bit longer. But saying that, sometimes, it really feels like it depends with who you're working with. So I've done events with marketing teams, and they're just like up for it from the get-go. I did an event for a nursery chain earlier this year,
Oh wow.
like
Yeah.
different nursery managers from all around the country, and they were just like straight up for it, probably like at one of your shows straight away. So it's very, very interesting.
That's
Probably
probably
my
because if they work for nurseries, they will have used music as part of their work.
Exactly, yeah. So it's part of their everyday experience. Yeah, I mean, probably my toughest one was for it was a big supermarket, and it was their like finance team who were like
Okay.
demoralized at the end of the financial
Oh god.
year,
Yeah.
and they were
Yeah.
just relying on me to try and bring a bit of joy. So I definitely earned my fee that day.
Do
But I really enjoy it. It's fun, and it's people. People are endlessly fascinating, and I kind of really like the challenge. A bit like a stand-up comedian might enjoy the challenge of walking into a slightly hostile room and winning them round. So yeah, that's kind of a little microcosm of how it works.
And I guess instead of heckles, you might just have people with their arms crossed, sat there thinking, I'm not getting involved with this. I'm not singing. I'm not doing any of this rubbish. Do you have a go to kind of song or exercise that snaps people out of that, or is it a longer term?
Yeah, with those people, I kind of play the long game a little bit, and just I keep it really, really light. Like, I think humor and kind of lightness of touch is really, really important. And I kind of try and make everything invitational. So rather than me doing it to them, I'm kind of bringing them along with me. And quite often it's those people who initially are like folded arms, grim faced, will come up to me at the end, and they were like, I don't know how you did it, James, but you got me, and I was loving it, and like it's almost like I've tricked them, or like it's some kind of magic trick.
Yeah.
And I genuinely think kind of singing is magic. It can work its magic, and that's something I guess I've honed like as my craft. Getting people to that point. But they're the people that I really want to get. Like they're the people, like the disbelievers. Like I've realized I've become very evangelical about getting people singing, and I kind of don't. I'll kind of resort to almost anything to get people singing. And actually parachuting into a conference where people are in suits and a little bit kind of apprehensive is probably one of the best examples of that, because they might be the people who are hardest to reach. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure what the question was, but yeah, I mean, I think that is part of a wider kind of ambassadorial role that I really enjoy taking with singing. So yeah, you mentioned my book, which kind of is a bit of a manifesto for why we should be singing more from a kind of a human
And
perspective,
that's
and it
called
gives
Do Sing, isn't it?
it's called Do Sing. It's
Yeah.
very does what it says on the tin. It's part of a series called the Do Book series, which are these kind of short, kind of inspirational kind of pocket guides to all kind of things from business to beekeeping to singing. It's a great series to be part of. And it's had a great reach. It has global kind of what's the word? Kind of public. It's published around the world,
Yeah.
which is great because obviously singing is universal. So I think over the last few years, maybe starting with the book and then accelerated, obviously during COVID, when I set up Sofa Singers, which is my online global sing community, I've kind of shifted, I guess, from being more geographically based to kind of running a choir in this school or running a community choir here to thinking, well, do you know what? There's a lot of people in the world, and everyone can benefit from singing. So how can I help, how can I start to reach more people? So the book is a great way of doing that. Speaking on podcasts is a great way of doing that. So thank you for inviting me. Doing talks, so doing keynotes. And then obviously Sofa Singers, which is now over 500 sessions in. We've been running 100 sessions a year for the last 5 years, and we still reach every corner of the world with that. So yeah, so that continues to be the mission.
I think that's fantastic. And I think during the lockdown time, a lot of people were trying to find ways to connect with community, but also a lot of musicians were thinking, all right, what am I going to do next? And you had people like Eric Whittaker, who I think he actually had started it before lockdown, but doing like the virtual choir and all that sort of stuff. So,
oh yeah, I mean, thank goodness for Eric Whittaker for kind of paving the way, because it was, I mean, in terms of singing, there was kind of two main approaches in lockdown. There was kind of the live sing-along sessions, like Sofa Singers essentially, is where it's in real time. People can't hear themselves, but they can join in and be part of something that's live. And then there was the kind of virtual choir projects where you would be sent learning parts and you'd learn your part and you'd record it and you'd send it and it'd be mixed together and it would sound like a choir. And both approaches were brilliant and kind of, I think, probably delivered slightly different things on a musical level and on a kind of a human level. But yeah, I actually got to speak to Eric Whittaker during lockdown. I kind of did a 10-part podcast series where we had an hour-long chat, which was amazing. And so we did talk about that. But yeah, I mean, so if he hadn't pioneered that format kind of years before lockdown, I think, we might not have had that same kind of level of connection. And, there's some amazing videos, like virtual choir videos that came out during lockdown. I think it was so important for so many people.
It's funny how something that when he first started doing it, it felt a bit sci-fi, didn't it? It felt very futuristic. But then actually when you got into the lockdown time, it became the norm, which was very strange. I did feel my heart went out to anyone that ran those sorts of choirs and was trying to mix it all and getting a good sound out of it, because having done a couple of years of online teaching, especially with singing, it's quite hard to make something sound good.
It is, yeah, and a lot of the bigger videos had so much kind of post-production and whatever, and I did do a couple of them.
Whack a load of reverb on it.
Yeah, well, basically a load of reverb and double track everything, whatever. But I mean, it's quite an art form, to do that. And with my two community choirs, we kept singing online and we did do virtual choir videos. I was like slightly reluctant just because of so many moving parts and whatever, but it was worth it in the end. But I was very kind of resolute from the beginning with Sofa Singers that wasn't what we were about. And I wasn't apologetic about it. It's like, this is like a live yoga class. You can all see each other. You're all joining in. I really loved what you were saying there, James, about like at your shows, people have like kind of levels of engagement that they decide, like how much am I going to join in with. That's exactly the same with Sofa Singers, so people can kind of opt in to harmonies, they can opt in and out of singing the verses, or they can just belt out the choruses or the bits they're familiar with. And I think, again, that's a really nice approach to singing that's more kind of invitational and softly, rather than you have got to sing this all the way through and get it right, which is so many people's experience.
Do many people leave their cameras off when they do it? Or does everyone put their camera on?
I don't know really. I'd say maybe about 3/4 have their camera on. Yeah. And also it gives people an opportunity who are new to the community to kind of, do it kind of from behind, the with their camera off at first. So often what people, you often see a progression. People might join for first few sessions with camera off, and then they feel confident, and then they'll turn the camera on. And then maybe in a few sessions later, they might even come on the open mic and say hello. And then maybe a few weeks later, they might actually sing a solo song in the open mic. And yeah, so it just kind of gives people this kind of journey into singing that isn't just thrown into a room and giving some music and being asked to sing something that's out of their comfort zone. And I think that can be the experience for so many people. People want to be part of something, they want to sing, but obviously often the route to that is kind of just going in at the deep end and maybe being put off. So I think the more opportunities there are for people to kind of try things out, take it at their own pace, kind of find the right level for them, I think that's really, really important.
Okay, so we've just been chatting about all the singing that you were leading in lockdown, and actually during that time, you won an award, which is amazing, the Points of Light Award, and I bet that was quite a nice moment to, we don't do this for awards, but it must have been quite nice to have a bit of recognition.
Yeah, do you know what? I felt a bit ambiguous
Really
really.
about it because of it was from, I had a handwritten letter from the then Prime Minister, of whom
Which one was that at that time?
that was Sir Boris.
Oh,
Dear
okay,
old
okay.
Boris, yeah. And so look, I don't want to get political about it, but I was kind of like, I'm really glad I've won this. This is wonderful, but I kind of don't feel like I can shout about it all that much because
Yeah.
I just had no. I mean, what I did was I just said, look, this is just so brilliant because it's shining a light on how important singing is to keep us connected, which is absolutely the truth. So look,
Yeah,
it
and it
was
goes across all political boundaries and everything.
exactly. Yeah. I think just, we were just in the weeds of COVID. It was even obvious by that point that the government were just making some very strange decisions, were behaving in a way, just personally, Partygate and all that. It was just, and I think I was just feeling it very deeply in lockdown. Like a lot of people were feeling many things very deeply. So I kind of, yeah, but yeah, with the passage of time, obviously it was really great recognition for the community, for singing. And then actually, I think it was about 2 years ago, I was then, because there was never an in-person award because obviously it was COVID, but there was a Eurovision event. It was when Eurovision was in Liverpool, must have been 2023. And I was invited to kind of a dinner drinks dinner party thing at Downing Street,
Oh well.
with Rishi Sunak. And it was again I was kind of a little bit, oh, should I do this? Should I not do this? I'm not a fan of what they're doing.
Yeah.
But in the end it's like, well, the message has to win out, like you can't be an advocate for singing and for community building if you don't take these opportunities. So I went, and yeah, it was great. There were lots of other people there who'd won Points of Light awards, for music related things. There was a big Ukrainian representation because they were the winners of Eurovision. We were hosting it on their behalf. Um, yeah, so it was a very bizarre experience, but it was really, interesting. And I think as a musician, you get these interesting experiences, don't you? Like you just like doing a flash mob last week with Lesley Garett in a Bradford shopping centre. Like sometimes you just have to kind of say yes and go with it. And sometimes in situations like that, I almost kind of think of myself as a bit like Louis Theroux, just like I'm just going to go into this environment and just kind of watch and just be part of it, but know that I can kind of walk away again at the end. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and that's all part of the journey, being a musician and just being put in these situations, and some of them you really embrace and you really enjoy it, and sometimes you think, okay, I'm glad to be part of this, but maybe this isn't my thing, and yeah. So look, I'm not downplaying the award; it's a wonderful thing, and it really highlighted the mission that we're all on.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, isn't it? And you never know where your musical journey, what kind of situations that will put you in. But as you said earlier, it's kind of that. It's almost like that shining light, that almost like evangelical spirit of whatever situation you're placed in. And I guess you could even think about like the TV series that Gareth Malone did of going into all sorts of different scenarios and bringing music to it and starting choirs and all that kind of stuff. So I suppose you never know what situation you're going to be put in. But let's now talk a little bit about this new project a bit more, if that's all right. The Bantam of the Opera, which is a great name. I mean, I'm not a massive football fan. I do keep up with football a bit, but I actually didn't realize that the Bantams, that was the nickname.
Yeah. So yeah, the nickname of Bradford City FC are the Bantams. So obviously it's a brilliant play on the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. And I think literally the starting point for the production team was that phrase, and then they kind of worked out the
Sure.
concept from there. It wasn't
Yeah, oh,
let's
that's
get
interesting. Yeah.
let's get football fans singing and then let's think of a good name. It was like, here's a great name and a concept. And I think they just ran with it, and people just were just like, that's a great idea. So kind of bringing back to singing in schools, Andrew Lloyd Webber is involved with the project. I've had meetings with his team. He's gonna probably come and visit the choir later in the year. But the part of the project he's particularly excited about, I mean, I think he quite liked the pun, and he is a football fan. But the thing he's particularly excited about is that we're going to be taking our singers and the project into schools. There's going to be an outreach element to Bantam of the Opera, because since I talked about the kind of the golden days of when I was at school, and even when I started working in schools, we know that the situation now is very different and provision is a lot more patchy. And so Andrew Lloyd Webber has his own charity, and he's really passionate about taking music into schools, particularly in deprived areas. And so, yeah, so that's the part of the project that he's really fired up about and is on board with. And so I think in the autumn, with Sir Andrew and some of our Bantam singers and maybe some of the BBC singers who are also on board with this. We're going to be going into schools, and so I think it's Radio Leeds who are kind of who are spearheading and running the whole project, which essentially it's a local radio commission, but has now had this huge reach, because of the people who said yes. Like I've already mentioned, Andrew Lloyd Webber, Chris Kamara, Lesley Garett, the BBC singers, because everyone just thinks it's a great idea. And I think the project has got so many layers to it that people are just coming at it saying, "Oh, I love this particular aspect of it. I'm on board." So Chris Kamara, for example, who's an absolute legend in the football world, but particularly for Bradford as a ex-Bradford player and ex-Bradford manager, he's really championing the fact that we're going to sing on the pitch next month, 3rd of May, and that's 40 years since the Bradford fire, which is kind of one of the kind of forgotten tragedies of kind of British football, which is when 56 supporters tragically lost their life in a fire at the ground. So we're singing on the pitch for that 40th anniversary. So for him, that really means a huge amount, but also for him, the mental health focus, because he's developed apraxia of speech. And so for him, singing has really helped with the fluency of his speech, which is amazing. And he's then inspired there's a choir member who's has been featured on TV as one of the VT pieces, Kennedy, who has a profound stammer and was inspired by Chris to sing in the choir. And she kind of wants to show her daughter that that there's no kind of barriers to to entry to these kind of things. And so we're going back to that kind of ripple effect. And so, like I say, what started, perhaps as quite a small project has now just absolutely ballooned. And we're only 6 weeks into it. And there's just so much good feeling around it. And I think it's just that there's always bad news, isn't there? I mean, the news is essentially there to deliver, the grimmer side of life. But it feels particularly kind of, dark at the minute, I think, for a lot of people, for lots of reasons. And actually to have something that is genuinely kind of feel good and kind of wholesome and not surface level, but actually quite deep and quite profound. I think people are just very, very receptive to that. And so we did our kind of 2-minute flash mob on last Friday at the Broadway Shopping Centre in Bradford, singing Habanera from Carmen. And in the last 72 hours, it's been viewed over 1 million times on across social media feeds.
So this episode will go out on it will go out. Let's see what date it's going to be. So it will be the 16th of April when this goes out. So I wonder how many views it will get by that point.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, and by that point, we'll have sung live on the Jeremy Vine show. So that's gig number 2. It's on live on the Jeremy Vine show, which is this Friday. And then,
Radio 2?
Live on Radio 2, yeah. It's from Bradford. It's part of the big brass blowout. So it's a weekend celebrating Bradford's brass band heritage in Bradford, which is great as a kind of lapsed trombonist. I'm very happy about that. And yeah, so we're performing All You Need Is Love with a brass band, which is great.
And there's someone in the choir, I heard, whose father died in the fire, right?
Yeah, that's right. So there's a lot of very personal connections to the Bradford fire. So Jane, who's a choir member, her father died in the fire. There were other choir members who were there, some even in the same stand where it happened.
Wow. Yeah.
And so the big performance really for everyone, I think, is the 3rd of May on the pitch.
Yeah.
It's the 40th memorial of the fire. So we're going to be singing at half time, and we've been working so hard behind the scenes on the music side of things. So we're going to be singing a special version of Take Me Home Country Roads, the John Denver song.
Amazing.
Which has been adopted by lots of different teams and football fans and adapted the lyrics, but the Bradford version is Take Me Home Midland Road, which is the name of one of the stands. And there's a local band who've kind of rewritten all the lyrics to give it a Bradford focus rather than a West Virginia focus. And it's sung all the time on the terraces. And so basically we commissioned an orchestral arranger to create a new version of it, which has this beautiful kind of slow introduction and a flugel solo, which kind of is a little bit kind of reminiscent of The Last Post to give it that kind of reflective quality. Lesley Garett's going to open it. And then the song kind of picks up, and then the choir sing, and we add some harmonies, and then we can invite the whole crowd to sing. and I think it's going to be amazing. But it was one of these things that we had to get it right because it's such a big occasion for the club, for the people in the choir. Chris Kamara is going to be singing part of the solos. It's going to be a really big event. And on top of all this, it's likely, fingers crossed, that Bradford are going to be promoted, perhaps even at that game. So they're currently first in the division. And 40 years ago, which is when the Bradford Fire happened, they were also top of, they were about to be promoted as well. So there's all these kind of links and parallels. So everyone in the choir is really gearing up for that. And actually, at this week's rehearsal, we're going to be pre-recording some of the choir vocals because we know that it's going to be incredibly emotional for a lot of the singers. So they are going to be singing live on the day, but we are going to have everything on the track as well, just because, it's just, I can't quite envisage what a big moment it's going to be.
I feel like the project it's kind of physical and mental therapy, because you've got the physical side for people, if someone's working through health conditions of the stammer or with, Chris Kamara's condition, having singing being a way of helping with that is amazing. And the mental health of people that have experienced such a huge trauma of that occasion with the fire, I think that it kind of just encapsulates everything that's amazing about communal singing, and something that we've both been banging the drum for, and how incredible it can be in so many different ways. And it's kind of funny in a time where music and singing are kind of fading out of schools in lots of ways. I saw some stat which was something like by the mid 2030s there won't be any music GCSE at all in schools.
I know, and as
it's dropping so much.
And as an ex-music teacher, it makes me so sad, because I know, because I was a secondary school music teacher for 10 years before I went freelance, and I absolutely know how important it is. And even in those 10 years, I saw how provision started to wane, and it's never a big thing. It's just a gentle kind of chipping away, like the EBAC not having an art subject in, and all this kind of stuff. And I just, for me, I can just completely join the dots between, well, do you know what? We've got young people whose mental health is poorer than ever, then they feel more disconnected and perhaps disfranchised than ever. And at the same time, something that we know is incredibly good for all of these things, for physical health, for mental health, for sense of self, for connection, for confidence, is being kind of stripped away, and that's why, yeah, I'm going to keep banging the drum. And actually, talked about Lesley Garett, who's obviously had an amazing career as a operatic, kind of soloist and whatever, and he's kind of maybe to be seen as a kind of like an elite performer. But actually, she's incredibly passionate about this. She says when she grew up in Yorkshire, in schools, there was just singing all day, singing in the community, singing in the schools. She grew up in a very working class background, she wasn't born into the kind of the culture or kind of privilege that we often might associate with certainly opera or Western art music. And I think, yeah, if we don't keep propagating that culture of singing in schools, then people don't have a reference point. So people come into your shows are able to engage and have a great time because in a way it's nostalgic, because it's remembering how they felt 20 years ago. But in 20 years time, if there hasn't been any singing culture in schools, then people then can't kind of revisit that, and then that becomes a massive problem, because we lose this collective memory of what it is to be together to sing, and other places where people have traditionally sung, such as in church. We know that church attendance is in decline. And where I'm in North Wales, there used to be a huge, kind of community of choirs associated with kind of pits and the mines and those industries, and they've all disappeared. And so for me, it's kind of like this perfect storm, and there are not many people who kind of, I think, understand it in the way that I feel that you understand it, and there are kind of like my peers. And in lockdown, as part of that podcast series, I had a great conversation with an American writer, Priya Parker, who wrote a great book called The Art of Gathering, and she was kind of saying there are so many kind of people who used to lead within their communities, who would kind of bring people together in certain ways, that we're having to really consciously put it back in, and singing is an example of that. So yeah, it's the mission is much more than singing. It's about connection and community and all of those things.
I've got a couple of stats here actually. So in May 2024, 42% of state-funded schools no longer offered GCSE music. And between 2010 and 2023, A-level music across the country, across the UK, decreased by 43%. And the report said that by 2033, A-level music could vanish. So that's kind of the educational music. But I think more importantly, in a way, you got that pipeline of having the music education in school. But I think what you were just talking about is extremely important, of that kind of day-to-day collective communal singing. And funnily enough, I talked about that in the episode that's coming out the week after yours, which with a guy called Tom Carradine, who leads something. I don't know if you've seen his stuff online, but he's got something called the Cockney Singalong, and it's a brilliant.
Sounds good though.
I went along to it. It was absolutely fantastic, and basically, it's kind of keeping alive a lot of those old kind of wartime songs and songs from the 1800s all the way through to the 1960s. I think he does even do. Sorry, say again.
Kind of like music hall.
Music hall, yeah, exactly, yeah. And but we in our chat talk a lot about that kind of collective music experience, and the fact that it wasn't just for an elite, and it wasn't just through for an educated community, but it was for everybody. And whether it be people, just stood around a pub piano and someone just sits down and starts banging it out, but everyone knew the songs, everyone knew this, and you didn't need a lyric sheet, but yeah, you can't really imagine people coming out in the, bringing out their hymn sheets in the football stands. Right, okay, turn to page 12, and we're going to sing "Who Are You?"
Exactly. But I think what we're talking about is just it's like a collective consciousness and a collective memory of group singing, and yeah, it's really important that whatever context we're in, whether it's like primary school bangers or sofa singers or Cockney sing-alongs, like people will gravitate towards the things that they want to gravitate towards. And I think it's just really important. So often we get kind of hung up on the form of it or the songs or whatever, but it's actually, let's just get to the heart of what this is about. It's just about creating these experiences where we're creating this collective consciousness of singing. Yeah. And we have to keep that, because otherwise it will be lost.
Absolutely. I do have to ask you, did you have a favorite school assembly song growing up? Do you remember any in particular that you liked?
So many. I mean, I think at school it was Shine Jesus Shine, which I loved your podcast with Graham Kendrick, the writer of Shine Jesus Shine. And is that your, like, I know you've done like a lot of top tens. Is that your number one?
That was officially my number one in the top 10 primary school assembly bangers, and it was amazing. And actually, talking of what we were saying just now, I actually mentioned to Graham Kendrick that I kind of feel like these assembly songs in a way are a new oral tradition. It's a new folk tradition that's been passed along, and I kind of asked him questions about how did his song get into so many schools when it wasn't in a lot of the songbooks, and how did the claps come about, when you have "Shine on Me" and then everybody knew the claps. How did that happen? And we were kind of talking about this idea of a word of mouth tradition, which is really fascinating, and how hopefully that kind of folk tradition will carry on, and so many people of whether you're, especially with the Come and Pray songs songbook, which came out in the mid-70s, I think a lot of people that were at primary school from the mid-70s to the late 90s, when it was mostly sung, will have that collective communal experience of singing the same songs, literally singing from the same hymn sheet in a way, whether they had faith or whether they didn't even really sing along that much in school. They will still remember the tune, still remember the words. But I mean, the Shine Jesus Shine connection was fantastic.
Yeah, and a lovely moment a few months ago, because happily there's a lot of singing in my kids' school, which is really great. I don't know if it's a North Wales thing or whether we just picked the right school or whatever.
Yeah.
But they come home and sing snatches of songs in Welsh and English. Anyway, one day I could hear my daughter upstairs singing "Shine on Me,"
Yeah.
so I kind of came up the stairs and joined in, and she was like, "You know that song? How do you know that song?" I was like, "Oh, how do you know that song?" So it's living on. It's living on.
I had an email this week actually from someone saying that a lot of the assembly bangers are taught in Welsh language medium schools. Um, in Welsh. So a lot of like Shine Jesus Shine is sung in Welsh, and a lot of
Wow.
like Give
Okay,
Me Oil
so
at My Lamp sung in Welsh.
my daughter's at it's an English medium school, but there are lots of Welsh medium schools here. So yeah, I imagine that'll sound beautiful.
Yeah, I had an episode. I don't know if you managed to catch it with a singer, a Welsh soprano, and we talked a lot about singing in Wales and how there's no kind of I don't know, preconceptions about what it's like to be a singer. Everyone just does it. You know, it's you don't
Right.
you don't feel self-conscious about it. So growing up in South Wales, she said a lot of people just everyone sang. You had the Eisteddfod where everyone would just get up and do a song or whatever, and it's just part of that culture. I won't talk about that now because there's a whole episode about that. But
Sure, yeah, but go back and listen to it. Yeah, I'll be sure to check that out. Yeah.
yeah. Well, we better wrap it up because I've got a pack to go on a flight. But it's been honestly, I would
Leaving on a jet plane. They're the song for
leaving on
every
a jet.
occasion.
That's a good one. We'll put it into the set. Honestly, I could have. We are both singing from the same hymn sheet. We're banging the same drum in slightly different ways. But I've been following what you've been doing for a while, and it's just. You know, it's just inspiring for me. It's inspiring for so many other people, and I'm sure a lot of people have been really helped by the work that you've done in terms of bringing singing to them, whether it's been during a dark time during lockdown or whether they are working through things. You know, singing can improve people's lives in so many different ways, and we will
And
both
you never,
keep.
and you never know, you never know how it's helping as well. I think that's the important thing to say as well. You never know quite with those ripples. So that's just why we have to kind of just
Yeah.
keep the faith and keep doing it. And likewise, you're really inspiring with everything you're doing as well. So
A few people have come up to me at the end of shows and said, "Oh, I've really needed that. I really needed that." I won't go into why, but I've had a really rough week and I just needed a bit of a sing. And I think that's if anyone's listening to this that isn't a singer or has felt self-conscious, then please get involved in some kind of choir or however you can locally. I'm sure most towns and cities across the country will have some kind of community choir or local choir or rock choir or something, or you can join Sofa Singers.
Oh, very good. You beat me to it.
Very
But
good.
I think that's a good point as well. Like the third part of my book is actually helping people guide people towards what the right singing group might be for them. Because like you say, there are so many options, so many different styles, so many different approaches, all those things. And I think it might just take a few goes just to find the right one for you. It's a bit like if you've ever been to a yoga class, you might try out some different instructors or approaches to find the one that feels like a good fit for you. And I think it's really important to say that with singing as well, that if you turn up to your local choir and it's not for you, don't think singing's not for you. It's just that that particular environment might not be for you. But yes, if you're not sure where to start, thesofasingers.com. You can start your 14-day free trial. Come and sing with me every Thursday, every Tuesday, every Friday. We'd love to welcome you. Yeah, from the safety of your mute button as well. So there we go. There's a word from our sponsors.
Amazing. And where else can people find you online?
I'm on Instagram and Facebook and X at J Sills Music, which is where I kind of share about my projects and sofa singers, and there's a lot about Bantam and the Opera there. And if you want to find a bit more about the work that I do with companies and organisations and talks, I'm also on LinkedIn as well.
There we go. Well, what an amazing guest speaker in the Assembly Hall today. Thank you so much to James Sills for coming on the Notes from School podcast. So there we go. Thank you so much. And
Cheers,
can't wait
James.
to chat to you again at some point.
Yeah, and let's sing together in person sometime. That'd be fun.
Definitely. You're always welcome. I need to come up to North Wales again.
For sure.
Okay.
All right.
James.
Cheers, James.
There we go. Hope you enjoyed that conversation. And as with all the guests, if you want to find out more about them, then I'll put all their socials in the show notes on YouTube and Spotify, whatever. And if you've got any questions as well, send them in to notesfromschoolpodcast@gmail.com or comment on the episode on Spotify. I will see all those comments and emails. And can't wait to see you in the Assembly Hall next week, where we're going to be talking about Cockney sing-alongs and the Tarara Bumdier songbook, all the amazing stories behind Cockney songs with Tom Carradine. You may have seen him on social media with an incredible moustache. He's the best dressed musician online. See you next Wednesday. Tune in then for St. George's Day Classic. In the meantime, keep smiling, keep on singing, and have an amazing rest of the Easter holidays. Class dismissed.